What's up guys, it's Tyler. Today we are back in the blue car. We're gonna do a little bit of maintenance, a little bit of upgrading. In our previous videos I had mentioned that I wanted to move to E85. Obviously with that you need larger injectors. E85, it's magical. If you have it in your area, there's no reason you shouldn't be running it. Even though you get worse fuel mileage, especially with the price of premium right now, it is well worth it. So what we're doing today, I am doing injectors. With that, you'll need an injector harness because aftermarket injectors don't use the stock harness. And the maintenance part, I am going to be doing injector insulators. We recently started carrying them. They're something that we should have had a long time ago, and it's something that everybody should do when they're doing their injectors, especially on older cars. So your injectors obviously sit in the fuel rail here, and then this portion is where they go into the head. But they don't sit directly into the head. They sit in these, what GM calls insulators. And as you can see there, they kind of seat in like a little bucket, you could say. These are made of plastic. They are plastic because, as the name implies, they insulate from heat. So plastic, O-ring, 150,000 miles, they're bound to be a little cracked, very dirty. O-rings wearing down. They're like $5 a piece. Grab them while you're doing your injectors and go from there. So we'll show you quick, easy, like last time, how to replace your injectors, injector insulators, injector harness. For E85, most of you are gonna wanna do 80s. The only reason that I'm doing 60s is I'm staying on a stock pulley, at least for now. Kind of backwards thinking for a lot of people, but I've been having a lot of fun on a stock pulley. I can pick up some extra ponies by going to E85, and 60s idle a little better than 80s. But for most of you guys who want to go with a smaller pulley, pick up the torque, even more power, you will need 80s. You would max 60s out on most setups. So we'll hop in here. I'll show you guys a little how-to, easy install, and next part of the video, we'll upload the tune and go for a drive. All right, so like I mentioned, install's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. You just need a socket set, screwdriver, and that's about it. So, a couple things you gotta get out of the way before you get the fuel rail off. First thing I'm gonna do is come over here, take this line off of my coolant tank because you have to. This runs over to the fitting on the head, so you need to remove that. I take off the line so you don't lose a ton of coolant. Obviously, you're gonna wanna do this while the car is cold. Relieve your pressure there. And eventually, work that guy off. Hey, look at that. That was handy. All right, so your fitting is over here above your coolant hose. That's just gonna be a 14 mil. You'll work that off. You are gonna have a little spillage, but hopefully not too much. Now you do wanna be careful with this fitting, especially when you're going back in. The head is aluminum and quite soft, so I've seen people strip this before, and that is not fun to try and get out. So I'm gonna set that aside. That's nice and loose. So now that that is off, you're gonna want to pop your little protector off that holds the fuel line on. There are two ways you can go about getting the fuel rail off. How I'm gonna do it is leave this little dampener on this piece where the feed line comes in. I'm gonna disconnect here and then take the whole rail out as a unit. You can use two large wrenches and get it off here and then pull this off to the side. The only reason I'm not doing that is previous experience. I went to get this nut off and didn't hold this well enough and actually cracked this right here. I thought it could go back together nice and easy. It doesn't. So if you are going to use this rather than this, you're going to want 2 large wrenches. I think they're 15/16, but you've got to hold the piece on the rail before you start turning this. You can pick these bad boys up at the old Harbor Freight. They're pretty nice. Or you've got your old style metal ones. Now before you disconnect the fuel line, and I lost my screwdriver, you are going to want to relieve the pressure that is in here. If the car was ran recently, you're probably going to have a decent amount of fuel. So you take a flathead, there's a little Schrader valve there, just kind of press on it, get your excess fuel out. Another beautiful reason to go to the 85 is it smells so much better. Gas stinks. Gets on your hands. It's awful. Alright, so pressure has been relieved. We'll go ahead, take your fuel line disconnect tool, stick it up in there, put pressure up, push the line down, and work it off. Alright, cool. Not a bunch of spilled gas. Wonderful. Then, if your car is truly stock, it'll have the nice little supercharged cover plate. I'm actually looking for one of those if anyone has one. That goes over here. You'll have to remove those 2 bolts. But then getting the fuel rail off, you just have 3 10 mils. So we got one there. One there. And one there. So, also gonna grab this little copper washer that is under that coolant fitting, because I will lose it. So, now that you've got that all undone, you can see fuel rail is nice and loose. Basically, you're just gonna wanna pull it out towards you, and you might have to wiggle it. If it's never been out, it's probably gonna be pretty difficult, but should be able to work it out there. So I got one end. So I am getting hung up on this coolant line. There's a bracket that's on the head. You can just kind of squeeze that up to bend the bracket a little, and then it should come out quite nicely. All right, now work that out. Mind the vacuum lines. All right. So if you guys want to get in here, you can kind of see what I was talking about with the injector insulators. That's where you're going into the head there. So you can see, you know, this car has 140,000 miles on it. It's dirty, it's grimy, so be careful when you're doing this. You don't want to get crap down in there. I went through, when I cleaned these stock injectors, and used a vacuum and just kind of sucked everything all up. If you do that, make sure you stick like some paper towel or something down in the injector insulator holes. You don't want any of that crap getting into your engine. But so it's not too bad now. I'm not gonna clean it up anymore, at least for now. One of the next few videos we'll do, I'm gonna get the blower off, we're gonna get the intake manifold off, show you guys how to pull your laminate cores, replace the O-rings, do your dual pass. We'll have all the cooling mods. So we'll get there eventually, we'll get that nice and cleaned up. All right, so again, I know I say it all the time, but older cars, older engines, lots of miles, things can be a little difficult to get out. So if you are replacing the insulators, you don't really have to worry about marring these up. Most of them will come out quite easy with a pair of needle noses. Just don't look too bad. You can see how grimy everything's in there, but at least that one didn't appear to be cracked at all. Oh yeah, that one's got a layer of filth on it. Reason I bring the insulators up is, personally, I was fighting a vacuum leak for months on my old turbo red line. I was tuning with Al, we just couldn't figure it out. I checked everything. I mean, I went over, brake cleaned everything. We did, you know, vacuum lines, re-went over everything, couldn't find it, could not trace down this vacuum leak. Trims were off. Anyway, fast forward a couple months, and I wanted to pull my injectors to clean them. Did the insulators, vacuum leak was gone. So, little known, or, you know, I guess less common of a point that one might look. But yeah, these don't look too bad. I probably could get away with just reusing them, but with how affordable the new ones are, I'm just gonna pop those in. So now before I pop the new ones in, this is pretty clean in the holes, but I'm just gonna grab a little something off of here. New ones should go in just as easily as the old ones came out. I am gonna throw just a small amount of dielectric paste around there. You can use oil, some sort of lubricant, just to get it seated nicely. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the injectors when they go into the rail and into the cup. Again, you just don't want to go in dry, you know. All right, so to avoid getting any extra gunk on them, now that I've got stuff that'll stick, I'm gonna use the needle nosers and just work it in there. These ones are definitely going to be tighter than the ones that came out, but you'll feel them. They'll hit the bottom there. Move on to the next one. One can be a little difficult if you got the blower in the way. Next, we will pop off the old connectors and harness, get the old injectors off, and get the new ones back on. So, from the factory, you had either the factory green injectors or the black thick ones, which were 42s. Those maxed pretty quickly. I think on my first tune revision, I hit 108% injector duty cycle. That's not good. You don't want that. But I was able to lean it out a bit, gain a little more room. If you guys didn't see the other video of the car on the dyno, I made 238 wheel. Not bad. I'm hoping for 250 stock pulley on corn. We'll do that. So your injector harness swoops around here, goes down, there's quite a bit, and the plug should be, unless someone removed this bracket, should be right here, kind of next to the fuse box. And unplug that. All right. Now to get it off, if you do still have the bracket, You just want to take your needle nose, and it's kind of a V, goes through the bracket. You just gotta smush it together. The hard part is just getting in there. Or you just break it off. All right, now that we got the stock harness off, you'll see here, that's your stock Multec 2 plug. This is an EV1. We also sell EV6. No reason to choose one over the other. It's just a different style. Like I always say, don't throw your stock stuff away. If this doesn't work, you can put this back in. Make sure everything runs right first. All right, so that will be going on in just a moment, but we'll get the new injectors on. So now that we have the rail spilling fuel everywhere, basically what you have to do is remove these little clips there. Injectors will pop out, pop the new ones in, and you're good to go. Ah yes, peeing fuel everywhere. Doing this on a bench or something would certainly be a lot easier, but not everyone has a nice workbench, so we'll do it live. One's always got to be a little bit of a pain. Oh, I want to scratch that paint. Obviously, anytime you're working around fuel, don't smoke, don't be dumb. You shouldn't smoke in general. All right, those are off. I'm peeing everywhere. All right, old injectors, just pop on out. As you can see, these have had many miles. They're a little rusty, but they did their job well. Now, one thing to make sure when you are taking the old ones out, these O-rings, especially if they're loose and old, can pop off pretty easily. You might get stuck in there. You don't want 2 O-rings in there. All right. I'm gonna pour all this gas out. Old injectors are out. Time to put the new injectors in. So I'm gonna put the harness through here. It's gonna plug right back into your stock plug there. Clips in nice and tight. Another pro tip, if you say have the engine out and you're rebuilding, upgrading, doing forged internals, whatever, the MAF plug and the injector plug are the same. And if you flip-flop them, then your car won't start. So, if you ever come across that situation, check those. So, you're gonna wanna get this up out of the way, because we're obviously gonna have to get the fuel rail in there. So I'm gonna take my rail, take my injectors, get them seated nicely. Now, the way these clips work is they grab onto one of these lines or divots in the injector, and then they also grab onto the fuel rail there. So, what you'll want to do is orient them so you can use that. Now, the only pain with that is sometimes the harness can be a little tough to get around. So we got those there, we got that there. You want to make sure both sides are clipped. You see, injector's not going anywhere. Rinse and repeat for the other 3. Now, I'm doing 60s, like mentioned, on E85. Good idea for stock pulley, bad idea for larger pulley. If you guys are looking for new injectors and, you know, wanting to run E, wanting to make big power, whatever, we now carry the Injector Dynamics 1050X's, which I'm not installing today because they are pricey, but they are probably the best thing to happen to injectors since these 60s and 80s came out. 60s and 80s, they work well, they do their job. Everyone knows they kind of idle like crap on a 4-cylinder, especially 80s. The new IDs are amazing. We have them on our yellow Cobalt here. On gas, they are larger than 80s and they idle better than 60s. So it's pretty incredible what they've done. 60s and 80s are coming on 3 decades old, almost. So they're old technology, they work great, but we do have the IDs for sale now. All right, so this is gonna go back in. What I'm gonna recommend is plug your harness into the injectors first, which can be, I don't wanna say tricky, but these EV1 style plugs are a little bit tighter than the stock stuff was. So make sure you're fully clipped in there on all 4. Go. And 4. All right. So now we're going back in. Get your vacuum lines kind of out of the way. Get your injectors headed towards their home. You want to pull that coolant line up and over. And then start to rotate. And especially if you get some gunk like me, just want to be careful you're not picking up a bunch of it before you go to your home. So fuel rail goes in, kind of rotates down, then you get seated in your cups, insulators, whatever you want to call them. Then from there, kind of push it, seat it. All right, we're looking pretty dang good so far. Only thing I'm gonna do is get this harness out of the way, try and make the engine bay look a little cleaner. Me and Trev always talk about it. The LSJ with a blower just looks so good. It's just it's a good looking engine bay. We're gonna spice it up this winter, make it look real nice, but I did clean the blower. I don't know if you guys noticed. So, injectors are in, they're seated, they're plugged in. We're gonna reverse our uninstallation. Uninstallation? That's probably not a word. All right, so we got our 310 mils. We're gonna pop back in there. We're gonna get the fuel line hooked back up. We're gonna get the coolant line back together and back on the head. So I'm gonna start first with the coolant line. Don't forget the little copper crush washers there. This guy can be tricky. But there we go. And then what I always do is, again, to avoid possible issues, is run the bolt back until you feel it kind of click in. That way, you know you're not going to be cross-threading. So, it had shifted a little because I bent that bracket. The line itself is a little rotated, so we'll rotate her back home. Come on. What did I just say not to do? Remember 2 minutes ago when I said don't lose that copper washer? I lost the copper washer. She fell down there, gone, oblivion. If you need another, we've got them. So, we will get this guy tightened down. If you do happen to lose one of those washers, they're just standard size brake line washers, so you can run to Napa, AutoZone, whatever you like. All right, I'm gonna snug this up. Again, like I said, it's an aluminum head, so don't yeet it home. 1/4 inch ratchet should be good enough for you. Good there. All right. So fuel rail seated. We're gonna get these bolts in. Again, just give them one turn until you feel it. There it goes. So she's seated. Get them started by hand. Same for up here. All right. Grab the old trusty 10 mil. Run them home. Don't actually run them home. You don't need to. Connect my fuel line back up, which can be a little difficult. Heard it click. Good. Got our little keeper. That back on. And the coolant line. Bolted down, plugged in, fuel line on, everything's looking good. From here, we'll upload our base file, then go for a drive, then we'll head to the dyno. So, pro tip, key tip, whatever you want to call it, don't replace your injectors without a plan for a tune. These injectors are so much larger than the stock green bodies that while you could start the car, you're not going to want to drive the car. It'll run extremely rich. Get a retune, PCM update, whatever you want. Fire the car up and go have some fun. So it's the end of the day. We're going to go have some beers and we'll catch up tomorrow with the rest. See you guys.